Wow, what an introduction. Well, you know, make someone happy, make just someone happy, make someone the one your heart clings to. Now, my favorite line in that song is, fame, if you win it, comes and goes in a minute. Where's the real stuff in life to cling to? But that's for another time. The only other person other than my wife who could get me to do almost anything at any time is Sarah. I mean, whenever she calls or writes, I try to be responsive. So it's a great treat to be here with you today. And thank you for coming out. Just some things in the news recently. If you're watching the news last night or checked Drudge this morning, here's a headline: IRS workers who didn't pay taxes got bonuses. Well, of course, what's wrong with that, right? The Internal Revenue Service handed out $2.8 million in bonuses to employees with disciplinary issues, including not filing their income taxes. I'm in the wrong profession. Only in Washington can you get paid for incompetence. Here's another one. Navy to award contract for Marine One helicopter fleet in shadow of previous failure. The story says, the last time the Pentagon tried to upgrade the president's coolest ride, the fleet of helicopters, it didn't go well. Cost doubled, delays sparked ridicule, then outrage. And President Obama, then just a few weeks in office, said it was an example of the procurement process gone amok before defense officials killed the program outright. Did that mean they saved money? Of course not. It was $3.2 billion down the drain. In Washington, being incompetent never means having to say you're sorry. And here's another one. I won't bore you. I could go on and on and on, as Senator Tom Coburn has done in his book, Back to Black. $6 billion goes missing at the State Department. Well, that's totally understandable, right? I mean, you misplace millions every day in your personal accounts, right? The State Department has no idea what happened to $6 billion used to pay contractors. And then here's my personal favorite, although it's kind of hard to choose these days. This is from the Fiscal Times. Also, government blatantly wastes $30 billion this year. Hey, it's only April. They got more time. The lead sentence is kind of biased, but it'll get to the heart of it in a second. When the sequester cuts slashed $85 billion from the federal budget, crippling federal programs like Head Start, and halting crucial research at the National Institutes of Health, the government continued spending tax dollars on things like 3D pizza printers for NASA, a beachfront property loan program for millionaires, and a $300 million Army surveillance blimp that doesn't work. Now, if you who are in business ran your business the way the federal government runs the federal government, you'd be out of business. You'd have no customers. But in Washington, as Ronald Reagan used to say, the only proof of eternal life here is a government program. And this is the point. Why do we repeat, like the movie Groundhog Day, the same things every day, every year, every election? If everything we think and do has been thought and done before, doesn't it make sense to see what was thought and done before that worked and succeeded and what failed? And by the way, this is a perfect application, of course, for what's going on in the Middle East and has been over many administrations. You have the same proposals. Oh, well, we'll just give the terrorists a little more of what they want. We'll give up a little more land in Israel. We'll try to be concerned about them, and et cetera. We'll release some more prisoners as goodwill gestures, and those prisoners are murderers and terrorists, and they go back to murdering and terror, because that's what they do. And somehow we think, well, that's going to improve the peace process. How's that working out? Has there been a single reciprocal behavior from any of those who want to eradicate Israel and the Jewish people? If there has been, it has totally escaped me, and I keep a pretty close watch on it. Every single gesture that Israel has made in hopes of getting some kind of, if not peace, then at least calm in the region, has not been reciprocated. Just the opposite. Every concession is followed by more incendiary language, more acts of terror, more denial of Israel's right to exist. They can't even get them to acknowledge it's a Jewish state. Well, what is it? Martians? I mean, it boggles my mind. And it's not about left, right, Jewish, Gentile, Republican, Democrat. It is about objectively provable facts. That's the difference. But you can't, the whole concept of objective truth is totally absent in our culture now. It flew out the window. Somebody opened it up. Now, we consult, don't we, when we're going to I know I did when I went to Israel the first time in 1979 or any other place. What do? We get a guidebook. right? Or we go online now to find out best hotels to stay in, sights to see, good restaurants to eat in, places to be avoided, whatever. And who wrote those things? People who have been there. Right? They've stayed in the hotels, they've eaten at the restaurants, they've done their research, and so we rely on them or we wouldn't be buying the guidebooks, right? Doesn't that same strategy and thought process prevail in virtually every other area of life? Don't parents tell their children and grandchildren? I remember growing up, don't touch the stove, honey, it's hot, you'll get burned. Ow! See, I told you. Today, the social worker would come and take me away, and the stove manufacturer would be sued. Back then, it was called, you get what you deserve. But, Now, part of this, I think, has to do with pride, a deadly sin common to all at some level. We want to be thought of as unique and modern. We want the praise of others, though why should anyone expect praise from participating in dysfunctional government? As I've written in What Works, every government program and agency has authorizing legislation or a charter which established it. So we need to get beyond the rank partisanship and ask whether it was a Democrat or Republican program, a liberal or conservative philosophy that established it. Is it achieving the goal set for it in its authorizing legislation or its charter? If it is, we keep it. If it's struggling, we reform it. And if it's not, we get rid of it. That's how any business would operate. If you have a sales program, if you have a sales strategy, and it's not working, and your competition is outselling and outperforming you, you change your strategy, or you start selling a different product, or you go out of business. I mean, this is so logical. I feel stupid sharing these things because this was self-evident truth growing up. This would have astonished my grandparents that I'm even talking about things that they knew. It was obvious. Why would you write a book on something obvious? Jefferson's self-evident truth has been turned into Pontius Pilate's what is truth? It's rhetorical. It's meaningless. It's truth is whatever you think it is. Or as Charles Evans Hughes said, the former Chief Justice of the not-so-Supreme Court, I call him, truth is the majority vote of that nation that is able to best all the rest. Now, how cynical is that? Well, this is nothing more but a dance of scorpions. We're just talking about maneuvering and manipulating on the same field with sometimes different words, and sometimes words for the West and sometimes totally different for their own side. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. And in over 50 years, leaders may have changed, other things may have changed, but the substantive things have never changed. I take their comments and their actions seriously. They say they have a divine mandate from their God to wipe out all Jews, all Christians, all infidels, everybody who doesn't agree with them. And over 50 years, after the number of wars that Israel has faced and the terrorist attacks on schools and other innocent civilians, an honest person, an intelligent person, even someone with minimal intelligence would say, gee, maybe they really mean it. But I did one of the last interviews Condoleezza Rice did was with me at the State Department before she left Secretary of State. And I doubt if any journalist had ever asked this question before. I said, what do you do, Madam Secretary, when you have a group of people who believe, and she's a professed Christian, that you have a group of people who believe that their God wants a certain category of people dead. How do you sit across a table and negotiate diplomatically with that? Oh, would you just kill me by firing squad instead of burning me at the stake? Where's the give and take there? I'm just asking this honestly. I want somebody to show me every concession that Israel has made, every prisoner released to try to win some affection or some concession by Israel's enemies is never reciprocated. So if someone will show me the evidence, I'm happy to consider it. I have not seen it. And again, I keep a close watch on it. We're in, it's the old line about, denial is not just a river in Egypt. This is what we are. Yes,
What was Secretary Rice's response?
Well, it was kind of, she sort of blew it off. Basically, that it wasn't really serious, or the whole attitude is, well, that's just what they say to their own people. What? Yeah, but they're the ones with the guns and the bombs and the jackets and the blowing up stuff. Those are the ones well, they're not all terrorists. Well, fine. If you die in a terrorist attack, it doesn't matter whether 100 or 100 million, right? You're dead anyway. Yeah. Well, they're all part of the same picture, of course. Well, yeah, but they all have the common goal. They may hate each other, but they all have the common goal: get rid of Israel, kill as many Jews as possible. Right? Yeah. Well, look, Sarah and I were talking about this earlier. When Ronald Reagan was inaugurated, on Inauguration Day, January 20, 1981, the Ayatollah released all those prisoners because he actually he believed that Reagan was going to put a bomb down his chimney. Right. That was called peace through strength. That's the only thing. I mean, one of the greatest things I ever learned from Leon Uris in his book, The Hajj, was that the only thing the Arab and Muslim world understands is strength and resolve. And what are we projecting to the region? Weakness. And the only thing I learned in physics before I flunked table of contents was that nature abhors a vacuum. Some of you may be old enough to remember the old Chase and Sanborn coffee. They had the little oval thing on the top, and it was supposed to be fresher than any because it was vacuum packed. And boy, I'm sounding old now. You took this little key and you started to undo it, and you heard this, the sound of air rushing in. So nature abhors a vacuum, and the United States, we didn't ask for it, but we have it, is the leader of the free world. The world looks to us, the free world, and a lot of the unfree world looks to us as an example. And if we're not projecting resolve and conviction, then the message going out to the rest of the world is these people can be had, and that's exactly what's happening. Well, books have been written about this, and one of the things, the easy answer, is to start supporting people like me with letters to the editor. But you mentioned the media. I'm going to start there, start at the lower rung, and we'll move up, or the other way around, depending on your point of view. I tell people all the time, and I love your column. I said, well, please write a letter to the editor and thank them for caring. Oh, does that matter? I said, well, it must, because all of my opponents write demanding I be removed. I was talking about this the other night. Bill Buckley practically held the fort until reinforcements arrived. I mean, he preceded George Will, Krauthammer, me, Novak, a lot of other conservative or neoconservative writers. So it's not as dark as it used to be, but there's still enormous pressures. I just got a copy of a tweet this morning from some woman in Wichita, Kansas, who wrote the editor demanding I be removed. Typical, liberal approach to pluralism, tolerance, academic freedom, and openness and diversity. So you got to do it. You got to work at it. You got to go down and meet the publisher of the paper and say, I'll bring you 50 new subscriptions, or among my friends, if you carry whoever. And then you can meet with news directors at your local station. Tell a story. They still like good stories, and put it in a way that will be compelling. I remember doing a ZOA event some years ago. Mort Klein was there. I think you guys were there out in Silver Spring, Maryland. And Mort got up with the map that we're all familiar with. And, Israel, tiny Israel, right, surrounded by this vast landmass of nations that want to destroy her. And I said, Morton, take that map out again. And he did. And I held it up and I said, look, we all know this because we pay attention and we are committed to Israel's preservation. But we can't assume that anybody, and I mean anybody else, knows it. So we have our circle of friends and we get together and we talk about Israel and preserving it and prospering and all that stuff. But your next door neighbor, you may assume knows about it, but they may not. Take the map and show it to them. And what's the very first thing I said that everybody says after their first visit to Israel? It's such a tiny nation, right? I mean, you could repeat it like memorization. Well, people are taking their kids to soccer practice and the ballet and the piano, and they got economic problems and how to pay the bills. They don't focus enough. But one-on-one is still the best way of sharing truth. Better than the internet, better than anything. Taking somebody member of your club, member of your synagogue, member of your church, member whatever, and say, hey, what do you think about what's going on in the Middle East? Oh, well, I think this. I said, well, are you aware of this? What? No, that's the best way to get people informed, even bypassing the media. There's nothing stronger than the one-on-one. So it may seem small, but small can sometimes grow into big things. Question. I wish I had an easy answer to it. I think one of the things when you're dealing with foreign policy, of course, is Congress is often reluctant, except when something really egregious occurs, to meddle in it too much, feeling that this is the purview of the State Department, which is doing such a wonderful job in ushering in world peace. The last I checked, they don't call it the fudge factory over there for nothing. I think you have to tell stories. You know, Israel is a story. America is a story. We are a storytelling nation. Paul Harvey's Rest of the Story was an incredibly popular radio program for many years. I remember it in camp as a kid. We sat around a campfire and told stories. We have to tell stories. We have to retell Israel's story. And not just, in movies like Exodus, as good as it was, but in personal stories. I mean, Sarah talks about going to Israel for weddings and bar mitzvahs and stuff. This is not everybody can afford to do that. I understand, but that kind of building of a deep human relationship with another human being has a strength and a power and a veracity of its own. And so I think a lot of us need to get out from our comfort zones and start sharing information, not in an accusatory or upsetting way, including with members of Congress. I mean, they're a little better informed, I guess, in some areas than others, of some of these great stories. I mean, we haven't been around that long on the planet, and nations, the ones that we really care about, haven't been around that long either, at least in modern times. And so we just need to tell the stories over and over and over again. I don't have a simple answer to the question, but we're limited in our power and what we can do, but we're not limited by what we can do. So everybody does something, and maybe we'll look. I've spoken for and been familiar with AIPAC and a number of other JINSA and many other great Jewish and cooperative groups, but I've got to say that I have never encountered one with such credibility and passion as Emet. And I say that out of personal experience and conviction. Sarah is an amazing, if they could find a leotard and a cape that would fit on her, she'd be Wonder Woman reincarnated, okay? But this is the kind of passion you need. You can't sit still for a minute because of the forces out there. It's like the human body. There are always viruses attacking us. There are always things that mean us harm, from a cold virus to all kinds of more serious things. We have to keep our immune system strong in order to resist these things that are constantly seeking to invade our bodies. And the same, I think, metaphor applies in our foreign policy and our domestic economy. There are always forces seeking to weaken us, to make us sick, to destroy us. And when I say us, I'm meaning good people, humanity, not just Americans or Israelis, but people who yearn for freedom and just want to be left alone to live their lives and to raise their children and grandchildren in a safe environment. That requires work, because there are an awful lot of nasty viruses out there. Some are called terrorists, some are called other things that want to destroy us. So we got to work at it. You can't get in shape by watching an exercise video. You got to do the sweating yourself, okay? Right. Well, look at the whole Keystone Pipeline thing. I mean, what could be more political than that, for heaven's sakes? I mean, the environmental people have signed off on it. The State Department has signed off on it. And because you've got this hedge fund guy who wants to contribute millions and millions and millions of dollars to Democrat politicians, clearly the president is doing this just for political reasons. I think we could have the will and we could have the technology. And we are moving in that direction, though not fast enough. We import less Middle East oil now than we have, I think, ever. But we're not getting there fast enough. And I think we will have to eventually transition from fossil fuels. It's not going to happen overnight because the technology is not fully there. The batteries for electric cars need improvement. They're working on that. 60 Minutes did this piece a few weeks ago. What's it called? The Vesta? What?
Tulsa.
Tulsa, that's it. Thank you. I thought that was a town in Oklahoma. Tesla, that's it. Tesla, not Tulsa. Yeah. Tesla, very good. That's close. That's all right. I had trouble with it myself, so it's okay. So all of this stuff is out there, and I think it's going to come together. And, one of the great things we can do. The State Department has kept quiet, will not release these revised Islamic textbooks. Now, you remember they first came out, all Jews are responsible for AIDS and descended from monkeys and pigs and all that. Oh, well, we can't have that, so we'll revise that. Well, how do you revise a religious dictum? How do you revise a way of thinking that you think comes directly from God? And if you disobey, then you're in line for damnation. How do you negotiate that sort of thing? So they claim to have revised them. Can we see them? Well, no. So do you really believe they've revised them and they're Islamic schools? Come on, give me a break. So saying Al Capone has gone straight. Show me the evidence. Not there.